Good morning, everyone. So happy that you are with us for Senior Scams Exposed. Protect your parents and their life savings. My name is Elizabeth Aloni. I'm with Schneps Media. We are the largest local media company in the New York metro area with over 80 newspapers, magazines, websites, podcasts, and events throughout Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, the East End, Philadelphia, and Palm Beach, Florida. We are thrilled today to be able to provide this valuable information with Cona Elder Law. Seniors are being victimized in increasing numbers by scams perpetrated against them. Our panelists today are going to share information that we can learn about common scams that are becoming rampant and how to protect your aging loved ones from losing their nest egg to elder financial fraud. So let me introduce you to the lineup of experts today. First, please welcome Jennifer B. Cona. Jennifer is the founder and managing partner of Cona Elder Law, a renowned elder law and estate planning firm based in Melville, celebrating 25 years of excellence. Cona Elder Law consistently holds the top position as the #1 elder law and trust and estates firm on Long Island. Ms. Cona's practice specializes in asset protection, Medicaid planning, estate planning, probate, estate administration, estate litigation, special needs planning, and guardianships. She also established the Healthcare Reimbursement and Recovery Practice Group, dedicated to ensuring sustainable payment sources for long-term healthcare benefiting older adults and their families. Jennifer Cona has garnered numerous prestigious awards, including recognition by Best Lawyers in America and Super Lawyers. Her notable accolades include the New York Law Journal's Top Women in Law, Leadership in Law, Power 25 in Law, New York Law Journal's Women Leaders in the Law, and more. She's frequently featured in Long Island Business News, Who's Who in Healthcare Law, and Women in Professional Services. Thank you so much for being here with us, Jennifer.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now let's welcome Melissa Negrin-Wiener. Melissa is a senior partner at Cona Elder Law, celebrating 20 years with the firm. Ms. Negrin-Wiener manages the government benefits and estate planning departments, concentrating her practice in asset protection, Medicaid eligibility planning and applications, estate planning, mediation, guardianships, and veteran benefits. Ms. Negrin-Wiener also directs Cona Elder Law's Special Needs Practice Group. Ms. Negrin-Wiener's stellar career is highlighted by her involvement and leadership in organizations that advance advocacy for older adults and the special needs community. Ms. Negrin-Wiener serves on the board of the Elijah Foundation and was a board member of the Developmental Disabilities Institute. She serves on the Guardianship Committee for AHRC Suffolk and the Melville Chamber of Commerce Women's Empowerment Network. Ms. Negrin-Wiener is also co-chair of the Ginsburg Suffolk Attorney and Judges Council of Hadassah. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
Now please meet Ken Kern. He is a senior partner at Cona Elder Law, and Mr. Kern leads the firm's Healthcare Reimbursement and Recovery Department, concentrating his practice in healthcare facility representation, civil litigation, complex Medicaid eligibility matters, fair hearings, Article 78 proceedings, guardianships, and resolution of all issues related to resident financial accounts and healthcare facilities' bottom line. Mr. Kern handles a wide range of complex matters affecting not only healthcare facilities, but older adults and the disabled as well. Mr. Kern has received the prestigious Leadership in Law Award from Long Island Business News and has been featured in Who's Who in Healthcare Law. He's been named a Rising Star by Super Lawyers, has received the 40 Rising Stars Under 40 Award and the Kings of Long Island Award from Schneps Media. He's a pioneer in his field and is recognized for his superior advocacy skills and incomparable negotiating abilities. Mr. Kern not only sets the standard in healthcare facility representation, but is responsible for numerous court and fair hearing decisions, which have changed the Medicaid and guardianship landscape, leading to increased reimbursement rates for healthcare facilities. Mr. Kern regularly provides in-service seminars for healthcare faculty staff, as well as continuing education programs for healthcare administrators. He has appeared in Newsday's Ask the Expert column and has been featured in the Suffolk Lawyer and Long Island Business News. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
What tremendous legal professionals we have with you today. So thrilled. So finally, I'd like to welcome Arlene Markarian, who's a seasoned legal professional with over 32 years of dedicated public service and recently retired and transitioned to a vital role at FCA, Family and Children's Association. In her current position, she serves as the coordinator for both SOS Safe Observant Seniors Elder Abuse Program and the Nassau County Elder Abuse Enhanced Multidisciplinary Team. During her tenure as an assistant district attorney with the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, Arlene Markarian made significant contributions to elder abuse prevention. As the creator and chief of the Elder Abuse Unit, she played a pivotal role in establishing Nassau County's first Elder Abuse Enhanced Multidisciplinary Team. This collaborative effort brings together professionals from various fields to address complex elder abuse cases on a monthly basis. Her extensive career also includes 26 years with the Kings County District Attorney's Office, where she supervised the prosecution of thousands of domestic violence and elder abuse cases. Recognized for her outstanding contributions, she received the 2014 Ruth E. Moskowitz Award for Women of Character, Courage, and Commitment from the Kings County Supreme Court Civil Term Gender Fairness Committee. Wow. I mean, I could go on about our panelists, and I am thrilled that they are taking the time to join us today. So let's get started with this fantastic panel. Jennifer, let me get started with you. What are some of the most common scams and trends that affect seniors, and how do they typically unfold?
There's really a handful of typical kind of scenarios that we see. One of which is the lottery sweepstakes kind of scam. So this plays out where an older adult will get a phone call saying, you've won the lottery, you're entitled to $50,000, $100,000, something along those lines. But we need you to pay the taxes, for example, in order to claim your winnings. So we need you to pay $500 or $1,000 or something like that. And so the older adult will say, great, this is amazing. Where do I send the money to? And that's how they get you. So a senior will send this money. They're super excited. You know, they don't think twice about it. And that's how money goes out the window pretty quickly. And there may be another phone call that says, we need a little bit more. That wasn't enough to cover it. And, you know, they start siphoning more and more. And lo and behold, there are no winnings that come your way. It never happens. And you may be in for $3,000 or something along those lines. That's a really, really common one. Another common scenario is the romance scam. This is a long game where an older adult who might be lonely, living alone, not a lot of contact with family perhaps, gets involved in a relationship, usually by text or could be by email, where they eventually fall in love with this person that they're texting with several times a day, daily for sure. And they develop a very strong relationship with this person who is, knows a lot about them, gets very intimate. They haven't met them, but it becomes a very deep relationship. And they look forward to this communication because, again, they might be an isolated older adult without a lot of contact with other people. So they're vulnerable in that way. And like I said, it's a long game. This could go on for years. And then that person starts to say, oh, I really want to come meet you, but I need travel expenses. But don't worry, I'll pay you back. Or I'm waiting for an inheritance and we're going to share this money. Or I'm selling my house, I'm going to come live with you and we're going to share that money. It's scenarios like that that sound really believable because you've established a serious relationship and a rapport with this person. And it's very believable. And a person may send a lot of money. We've seen, 800,000 go out the door, 300,000, close to $1 million. We've seen people put their own house up for sale to send more and more money to this person that they're in love with. There's almost no end to what someone will do when they are in love with someone, even though they've never met them. But you have to realize this is a person who, again, might be very lonely and really needs this contact and this companionship. So that's one to really be aware of for your loved ones. Another scenario is the grandparent scam. You've probably heard about this one, where a grandparent will get a phone call that says, I'm in jail, I need bail money, I need you to send, $500,000 immediately and don't tell my parents that I'm in trouble. Or it could be, I took my parents' car and I went across state lines and then I got in a car accident and my parents don't know and I need money to fix the car, or, scenarios like that. And it's always urgent. And the grandparent is, oh my gosh, I have to help my grandchild. Of course, what do you need? I'll send it right away. It's this sense of urgency. Of course, I'm going to help. I'm going to do whatever you need. No questions asked. Where do I send it? That's where things really go down quickly because they want to help. They're not thinking twice. And what's new in this regard is AI. So scammers are taking voices of grandchildren from their social media videos, and they can clone that voice to be the actual voice of grandchildren and have that be the voice on the phone. So this is the latest development thanks to technology advances, and the grandparent is actually hearing the voice of their grandchild. So it's even getting more sophisticated by on the end of the scammers. So it's even scarier what's going on out there. But of course, the grandparent is going to do whatever they can. So the way these scams, this is just a couple examples of common scams, but the way these scams are unfolding is one by the urgency. So the urgency that the grandparent or the older adult feels means that logic is out the window. They don't take a moment to say, oh, where is my grandchild? Is this really happening? Let me hang up the phone and call and see if John really is, out of state, or is he home, or is he really in jail, which is, of course, what the person should do. But because of that sense of urgency, they don't. But for our listeners out there, that is what you should do. Hang up the phone, call the person that is at issue here and say, are you okay? Where are you? What's happening? But that sense of urgency is how the scammers are getting you. And the other way they're unfolding is by that building trust, that slow building of trust, and that intimacy factor where, you're feeling connected to someone. Maybe you're disconnected with other people, as I mentioned. That long game of becoming part of your life in a very big way and slowly building trust. That's the other way it unfolds. So, as you're dealing and talking with your loved ones, especially around the holidays when you're getting together, see if there's someone new in your loved one's life. Are they talking about a new friend, a new relationship, a new person who's part of their life now? And check that out, because that may not be legitimate. You really got to dig into that and see what's going on.
Wow, really important to be aware of. Arlene, why do you believe seniors are susceptible to scams?
Well, there's a number of things that have already been hit on. You're starting off with the loneliness issue. So, with a lot of older adults, and I want to throw this out there also, that was recently on the news that younger adults are being scammed a lot, especially with romance scams. They're on social media all the time, etc. It's the same thing. There's an issue of, let's start with the issue of loneliness. And the loneliness can be, even if your children are in your life, they may have moved away, maybe they call, but they're not there seeing you. Maybe you recently lost a spouse, and so you had somebody in your life, a spouse or other intimate partner, and now they're no longer there. And you're lonely. And that is one of the biggest factors when it comes to being susceptible to these scams, especially the romance scams, as you already heard, right? That, you're falling in love with somebody. Just make sure we're very clear. These people on the other end of this are professionals at this. They know how to hook you in. And so, and they test the waters a lot to see if you'll send a few dollars here and a few dollars there. And then the numbers start to go up. And yes, millions of dollars by single people alone have been sent out. So you have the loneliness factor, but you also have an isolation factor, which can go with loneliness. But you don't have to be isolated if you're lonely. You can have friends, but you're still lonely. But then there's isolation. where your friends have moved or have passed away, where your family has moved and you're all alone. You're not participating in any community activities, perhaps. Some folks, go to their houses of worship, some go to senior centers, some have friends, whatever it is, but you're not engaging in that. And now this computer or this telephone and people calling you are your only contact with any other people. And so that's another big risk factor. And the last one, which is more unique to older individuals, because the first two that I talked about can go for younger people, but what goes with older individuals perhaps is the possibility of some cognitive deficit starting to happen. What do I mean by that? There's been studies. There's been a study where it talks about how the area of the frontal lobe of the brain can become affected, and that is your area of judgment, where you may not have fallen for something like this a few years earlier. You're now starting to fall for some of these scams, and you're able to take care of everything else in your life. So outward appearances, everything is fine, but it's this one area that is starting to become affected, that your judgment is becoming impaired. A very quick example, I'll use my father as an example. My mother passed away. I lived in Brooklyn. I grew up in Elmont. I would come and visit my father every weekend. I'm an only child. I would always go. And my father taught me from day one, never pay for anything, for any contracting work or anything full up front. Always pay in installments, because you never want to pay for something up front. This is a man that was very savvy. One day he was having something repaired, and I found out that he paid for everything up front, and they weren't coming back. And, I had to call them and straighten this out, but this is something he would not have normally done. He was lonely. There were these young guys that were coming to do repairs, and he was sitting around and talking with them. And so these are the things to keep in mind. Even if you're calling your parents, and, if you're the adult child listening to this webinar now, you have to go, and this is no judgment on relationships. Make sure we're very clear. Everybody's got a different relationship in their family. But if you have this relationship, the phone calls alone are not going to be enough. You need to get into the person's house. You need to see your parents, your grandparents, and see what's going on there. And so those are really some of the biggest reasons why people will fall for this, and also their lack of understanding of technology. The fact that something can look real, that an IRS letter that's sent to you can look very real. The fact that now there's AI. All right, even before there was AI, with the grandparents scam, they would typically call in the middle of the night. So you're waking somebody up, and now they're like, think about when you're woken up in the middle of the night. So there are a lot of factors there, but those are your big ones.
Thank you. They're very savvy. They're very savvy. Melissa, how can seniors and their families recognize the signs of a potential scams, especially when they involve seemingly, trustworthy individuals? And we talked about strangers, but what about, home health aides or local service providers, or, the nice guys that are been at your house doing repairs?
I think that both Arlene and Jennifer touched on the, getting involved and being part of the process, whether it's, again, not to, speak of relationships, but making sure that there is a family member, a loved one that has a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney who's able to look at bank statements, who's able to, double check and see what's happening, so that they can catch something that might look funny well before it turns into, a major situation. Home health aides, we hear these stories all the time, where they'll help, all of a sudden they're helping pay the bills, they're helping write the checks. And, that's more of something that as the adult child, you kind of need to step in and be the person doing that. Make sure that you're involved in the regular everyday things, so that they're not looking for somebody else to help them with that. A lot of times, I hear our older adults saying their kids are so busy, they're working full time, they're taking care of their own children, and they don't want to ask them to do anything else. So they're asking other people. And, it's just a matter of kind of making sure that they know that they're a priority, and that, we want to help them and do these things for them and make sure that they're safe and that they're protected. You know, with the grandparent scam, you know, one of the things that jumps out at me all the time when I hear these stories is stopping and listening to what the person is actually saying, because so many people in the, you know, in the world these days don't go by grandma and grandpa, right? They have all of these, you know, names that, you know, whether they're part of a cultural thing or just, you know, the first thing that the grandchild said and it stuck, or whatever the case may be. And that right there is such a giveaway. But again, you have to kind of slow down and think about what's happening. Like Jennifer was saying, you know, the urgency of it, usually you're not even listening anymore once you hear that first, you know, word. And I actually watched this happen with my own father. I was standing in the room and he got a phone call and he said, my grandkids don't call me grandpa. And he hung up. And I was like, whoa, I got to remember that. You know, it's just something to kind of, you know, keep in the back of your head. And, you know, there's other things that people do too, like safe words and passwords and things like that, to make sure that, you know, they're safe, and things like we do with our young children, same kind of thing.
You make a lot of really good points about how you can connect with them. What are some of the other things that we can do to prevent our parents? You said getting involved, obviously, in their finances, you know, power of attorney, things of that nature, having conversations, educating them about the you know, the sophistication of technology. When's a good time? I feel like at this, you know, we're coming up to the holiday season. You know, what do you recommend that we do with our elder relatives?
Well, this is a great time for the conversation for sure. I mean, people are seeing loved ones that they haven't seen in quite some time. Some haven't seen their loved ones since before COVID still, right? And so sitting around the table, conversation to have, just checking on things. You know, if you're seeing a loved one for the first time that you haven't seen in a while, there are things that you know, we always tell people to look out for, not even necessarily just having to do with scams, but just generally, are they dressing the way they used to? And do they have food in their refrigerator? Is the food expired? Because all of this is going to kind of give you an idea of what's going on with them generally. Like Arlene was saying, if there's some cognitive issues, and that will kind of lead you down the path of saying, okay, I need to check on other things and I need to warn them about other things. So just kind of eyes open, you know, and asking the questions and having the conversations, even if you don't want to kind of put it on them, like you think they may fall victim to one of these scams, because sometimes people can get offended that you think that they would ever fall victim to something like this. You know, to put it out there as, you know, something you heard on the news, or, hey, I watched this webinar and listened to this crazy story, you know, just to put it in their minds, even if it's not like a, hey, I'm really worried you might fall for this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, or say I've had people call me from the IRS. And it scared me, but, you know, reminding everyone that they are professionals and they are good at this. It's not that you're dumb. It's that they're smart, too smart.
Yep.
Well, you know, all of these are great ideas and great conversations that we should all be having, you know, but Jennifer, what should we do if we suspect that a loved one has already been victimized?
We need to act right away. It's essentially a triage situation, right? If the accounts have been compromised, then the accounts need to be changed. The accounts need to be changed, or they need to be moved to another financial institution. One of the things that we would recommend in a situation like this is that the senior engage in estate planning, a tool such as an irrevocable trust. If the bulk of their assets are transferred into that trust, it would no longer be accessible to any current scammers or any future scammers down the road. But you have to act, and you have to act right away.
You know, I would think that once someone's victimized, they can sometimes become even more vulnerable again. You know, it's like almost the scammers know that this person is,
and
right,
they
like,
will keep coming
a little bit of money and more and more and more. So, you know, what legal resources are available to seniors and their families that have been scammed? And how does Cona elder law handle senior scam cases?
So we've seen the gamut. So as Jennifer referenced earlier, the romance scam. And in one particularly egregious case, similar scenario as described earlier, a lonely man meets a woman on a dating app. They strike up a relationship. Next thing you know, she's asking for money because she needs to fund an estate proceeding where she will inherit a large sum of money and thereafter buy a house where they both will live happily ever after. This was the very definition of a long game. It went on for years. So this was so egregious that even the FBI, the FDIC, and the Secret Service was involved. And you may say, why was the Secret Service involved? The Secret Service actually started off as an arm of the Treasury Department. But in March, I think, of 2003, it became affiliated with Homeland Security and is also tasked with investigating cyber crimes, which this was. So this man sent, over the course of several years, hundreds of thousands of dollars to this woman who didn't even exist. The feds advised that this was a group of men in an East African country who were perpetrating this scam on seniors across the United States. But despite being told this, despite the presence of the FBI, the Secret Service, showing up at his house, he refused to believe that this woman did not exist. He would say, prove to me that she doesn't. And it's because, as Jennifer touched on earlier, to admit that she didn't exist would be to admit, one, that he had been had and lost his entire life savings, and two, that he was once again alone. So when we got hold of this case, it was at the point where his daughters reached out to us and he was listing his house for sale, his last asset on earth, to sell and give her the entirety of the proceeds. And he made no, he didn't hide it. He advised his daughters, this is what I intend to do, and we're going to live happily ever after. So when we received this case, we immediately filed an Article 81 proceeding. And with that proceeding, we were able to also immediately file what's called a lis pendens, or a notice of pendency, which prevented the house from being sold, mortgaged, or in any way encumbered during the course of the proceeding. And that stopped the sale. And of course, with that lis pendens, we sent some very strong letters to his real estate counsel, the broker, and everyone involved in this sale. But it was on the cusp of closing.
Wow.
And in the guardianship proceeding, although this man wasn't your typical Article 81 candidate, by virtue of what the court saw, his just divesting his assets to the point where he was going to be homeless, they did appoint a guardian for him. And the house was saved, and the daughters were able to use the equity in the house to care for him thereafter. But it obviously stopped the scam moving forward. We've also seen the kidnapping scam, where, and again, these things happen not to seniors who have diminished capacity, but they could happen to anybody, seniors or otherwise. And in this particular scenario, this person had full capacity, and they were contacted by someone saying, I've got your grandson, and he couldn't get his grandson on the phone, although he tried, which would be the first step we would recommend. And the next thing you know, over the course of 24 hours, he gave them $60,000. So in a scenario like this, because he went to the bank and withdrew the money and delivered it to the scammers, the bank was not responsible for reimbursing the senior in this situation. They weren't. He knowingly and willfully did this.
Right.
He did tell me the bank gave him $30,000 back. When I asked him why, he said, well, I have $3 million in the bank. I said, well, that'll work, but they're under no obligation to do that. But as far as a bank's liability in a scenario like this, but we also had a case where a brilliant man was contacted by a person via email claiming to be tech support for a bank. And he gave that person access to his account because they said there was a problem with his bank, with his account, and they were going to fix it. And the next thing you know, $80,000 left his account in two $40,000 wire transfers. Now, in that particular case, we have we can get our foot in the door because there was no two-step authentication, which is now the benchmark as far as the bank would be liable if they fail to engage in two-step authentication. So additionally, on top of that, this man had no prior history of ever sending these kinds of significant wire transfers, and he had been a customer for over 30 years. So whether or not there's recourse varies depending on the scenario, and any slight twist in the scenario will determine whether or not the assets are recoverable.
Well, it certainly seems like, number one, it's critical to make sure you're involved in your loved one's attorney decisions and making sure that all the right things are in place for them to be protected financially throughout their life. And number two, it sounds like to react quickly, because it just gets worse and worse. And the longer it goes, the worse it is. So if you suspect, I would say, I feel like if I suspect anyone in my family, I'm calling you right away to say, help. What do I do? Because we don't know. Are there specific legal strategies and tactics? Some of these people were lucky, right? They had a lot of money in the bank. The bank turned around and was able to support them. But, what about like when you're being scammed even by local businesses or individuals? Are there strategies that attorneys can employ?
On something like that, it's again case by case. But look, if this is an actual business, right, that owns assets, and that's the first thing any attorney is going to look at. We have a situation where, from a civil perspective, they've been scammed, right? And we want to recoup their funds. So the first thing we do is an asset search to determine whether or not they're worth pursuing. Do they have anything to take? Or is this, a DBA where John Smith owns nothing, and when we get a judgment against John Smith, he's just going to close down and open up another DBA. And after that, we would file an action seeking the recovery. If it's something that's criminal, we would work with the district attorney's office, obviously, and the family in reporting it. But as far as, recouping these funds, it's how does the saying go? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Elizabeth, the important thing is that we really need people to come forward. There's sometimes a lot of shame around this, as you mentioned before. People are embarrassed that they fell victim to these kind of scams. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. These are professionals, as Arlene mentioned. This is a $3.1 billion industry right now, the scamming industry, and only growing year after year. So there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about. It could happen to any of us. And the only way to stop this is to talk about it more, report what has happened to you. So you want to report it. We can help people report it to the proper people, whether it's the police, the DA, Family and Children Association, where Arlene works. And if there's legal recourse, we will help with that. If we can get assets back for people, which of course is the goal, but we need to know about it. So you need to report it. We will look for the legal recourse, and we can only do that. And we can only stop scammers and shut some of these people down and some of these organizations down, because they are well-oiled organizations in a lot of cases. Some are one-offs by individual people, but a lot of them are organizations. We can only stop them if we can find who they are, and we can only do that by people reporting it. So it's just really, really important for people to let us know what's going on. It's benefiting the community, so we want people to do that and not worry about being embarrassed to your family members, or worry about things like that. We want people to get in touch with us or get in touch with Arlene at Family and Children's, so that we can handle these kinds of cases and report them also to the FTC, which tracks this information.
Mm-hmm. So we're all
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I just want to throw something else out there that, it's that, especially for the older adults that are watching, but for really everybody, it's not just, it's certainly people get embarrassed and they feel they're embarrassed by the fact they fell for it. But the issue that's also unique to older adults is the fear of losing independence. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important that if you're an older adult watching this, that you reach out to somebody that you trust. It could be your attorney, it could be Family and Children's, it could be somebody that you trust that you can discuss it with, because a lot of these folks are not even if you talk about it with them, they're not going to tell you what's going on, because they don't want you stopping it, and they're also afraid that you're going to take over. And that's a real issue with older adults, and losing their independence. So I want to say that, you know, people do need to, if you're older, you need to reach out and talk to somebody that you trust. And if this is somebody in your life, you want to, like we said earlier, you want to go to their home, you want to see your family, depending on what your relationship is. Again, different families have different relationships, but if you go to your parents' home and actually see your mother's home or your father's home, and you're seeing piles of unpaid bills, if you see lots of gift cards, because a lot of these scammers ask you to send them money through gift cards, and the person will go to the store, get the gift card, scratch off the number on it, read it to them. And so you want to look for these things. If one of my colleagues just told me before I came on, if they used to have their computer in another room and now it's in the middle of the living room, and they're spending a lot of time on that computer, that could be another red flag that something is going on. But again, what's your relationship with your parent or grandparent? You don't want to, I wouldn't talk about it specifically at a big Thanksgiving dinner, because the person may get embarrassed. But if you pull them aside and talk to them and see if they trust you enough where you can perhaps look at the accounts and look at the paperwork.
And
Really
also, if
good.
you're the adult child, you want to be supportive. That's the bottom line. Be supportive. Don't have any judgments. Don't say anything like, how could this have happened to you? How could you let this happen? Those kinds of reactions. Just be supportive and understand that this could happen to anyone. This could have happened to me as easily as you, that kind of thing. Just be that supportive family member that we all should be for each other, so that people will feel comfortable saying, this is what's going on.
Yes, yes. And making sure that your parents have support, like with an attorney that can oversee their financial world, so that they're not alone and it's not you. You know, people can kind of put that on you all and say, oh, talk to Jennifer. I don't, and just be able to be supportive and not have to be kind of the heavy, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe that's a little bit more palatable.
Mhm.
This is so critical to speak about. I really appreciate. We do have some questions I would love to get to. Diana wants to know, what happens if you have no children to review their expenses? And someone else, asked similarly about if their family lives very far away from each other. How do you handle that? What would you say to these our attendees that have this concern?
Well, I think I would say that if I had no children, or if I lived far away, then check your local nonprofits, like somebody like FCA. I'm gonna let the attorneys talk about checking with your attorneys, because that's also another thing. Attorneys, especially elder law attorneys, can become an important part of somebody's life. So I'll let them address that. But we have, different jurisdictions have different nonprofits. And so Nassau County has Family and Children's. And so you want to reach out to your local nonprofit and see what kind of programs that they have. And for example, like I said, we have a bill payer program here in Nassau where we're bonded. So it's not, these are professionals that are bonded and can help the person with their bills and also keep an eye on situations. So that's something I would do.
Mm-hmm. You could also have the child become power of attorney, or you could have them authorize them to be able to see the accounts, so they can monitor them weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be, so that you can see if there's any funky transactions. If there's a large dollar amount suddenly appearing on the account, then they can shut that down. And also, if a child is out of state or far away and can't come visit, you could perhaps hire a geriatric care manager who could be the boots on the ground, so to speak, who could visit. Or you could even have the cameras that pick up motion, that will, film a room, common space, kitchen area, living room area, to make sure that so you can check in, visually that way, or the motion cameras that pick up if someone hasn't moved in a while. There's things like that. There's all kinds of different technologies that can be used so that you can check on your loved one at different price points, basically.
Right. Can people reach out to you all there about helping manage their finances, like, overseeing what's happening? Is that something that you would go to for, an elder law attorney for as well?
Typically, elder law attorneys don't get involved in that, but we have a community resource center, a caregiver resource center, so we can connect people with all of those different resources. And that's a resource center that's open to the public, 9 to 5 every day of the week. People can come in and get those kind of resources, like the things I just mentioned. And we do have an elder law attorney staffing the center 1 day a week that will help people and give them guidance on those kinds of resources.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Jackie asked a good question. Recently, the bank asked me if I wanted to save my voice for future calls. Is this something new? And can she trust it? That's a good question with all this AI conversation.
Yep.
I don't know if that's anything that you all know about, in terms of, I know that I've been asked to do that before, but I think it would be probably critical to make sure it's legitimately the bank.
I don't know, this day and age, I feel like perhaps it's not a good idea to do that anywhere until, there's no way to know if what she's being asked is legitimate really at this, juncture, as far as who called her, did they ask her in the bank, that kind of thing. But it just does not seem like a good idea now that we're dealing
I've
with
never
all
heard
of
of
this
that.
AI.
Look, it's better to be safe than sorry. I mean, you're better off saying no and not doing it and it's not a scam, than saying yes and doing it and it is a scam. So
Right.
It's good to be on guard.
Well, why would they be saving I'm just curious, like, why would the bank, I mean, maybe I'm missing it, but why would the bank want your voice? I would not do anything like that unless you spoke to somebody personally from the bank. And even then, I would still reach out to, to even a local DA's office or the police department to see if this is a scam and what's going on.
Well, actually, a lot of companies are doing that. Phone companies are doing that. It's sort of like an easy identifier. So they're trying to use that sort of to speed up things rather than typing in your account number and things like that. But I think it's just a little too risky because of AI and cloning voices. So I personally am not comfortable with it. Let's say that the phone company's information gets hacked or the bank's information gets hacked. Now your voice is out there for the taking to be cloned. And they're saying with some of these, when you're prompted on the phone to say things like, are you so-and-so, say yes or no, or is your phone number this or that, and you say yes or no, and you just say yes, that yes can be cloned for something else, some other purpose that can be used. So, it's all really pretty frightening. Even just confirming information. So you just have to be really, really careful. If you are able to, in any capacity with those kinds of things, press a number instead of saying yes or no, press the number.
That's good advice. Joseph wants to know, what if a scam involves a family member? And he wants to know what constitutes criminal or civil in a scam.
Ken, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, I can talk about with respect to criminal versus civil. First of all, whether it's a family member or not, there is no penal law section that says something is a different crime or lesser crime because a family member conducts it. In fact, unfortunately, nationally, the most likely abuser is going to be a loved one, a close family member. That's just the profile of the abuser. So, but having said that, the issue becomes with family members, for most times, is whether or not you want to report it. There becomes this issue, are you going to report your son or daughter, niece or nephew criminally? So that's one big issue. Most people don't want to do that. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying most people don't want to report a loved one to law enforcement. Whether something is criminal is basically whether something is within the penal law. So a dispute over owed money may not be a crime. The fact that you lend somebody money and they're not paying you back is probably not going to be a crime. Whether somebody took the money without your permission, or if you're unable to give permission because obviously you have a significant cognitive issue where it's clear you don't know what you're doing, that then will probably be a crime. They're just very difficult to prove. A lot of these cases, when it comes to money, can be very difficult to prove, which is why if you are looking to do something in a courtroom, especially in a criminal case, you want to make sure that you're keeping all your documents, you're keeping all the documentation and creating a timeline as to what's going on. It's very important to do that.
Another good example of criminal versus civil would be if the family member forged mom's signature on a check for $100,000, let's say, that would be criminal, right? In the alternative, if the family member was appointed as power of attorney and then transferred money to himself, presuming that power of attorney had a gift-giving, and most do, provision, then that wouldn't be criminal. That would be something that would have to be taken up in a civil court.
Oh, okay, that's a good distinction. Thank you. Lauren wanted to know if you have an elder parent with early dementia, but they still have capacity and they were scammed, but they don't want to pursue recourse against the scammer. Can the adult child report alone, or is guardianship the only option? So I think here kind of comes some of the shame. There's some other questions about that. I'm embarrassed. How long do I have? So, you know, what do you recommend?
Well, if the person has capacity, whether or not there's a diagnosis of dementia, then and just doesn't want to do this because doesn't want to report because of the embarrassment, a guardianship proceeding is not a viable option. It is not. You know, that person still has rights and they still have the decision-making capability to say, I don't want to pursue this, etc. You know, from a criminal perspective, I'm not a criminal attorney, but it would seem to me that the victim would need to cooperate with the authorities, even if a third party reported it.
In something like that, yes, because they're the only ones that they would have to, in a criminal case, somebody has to say this person didn't have permission to take this money. And if the person has capacity at that point and is willingly and doesn't want to come forward, then the criminal case isn't going to have anybody saying, I sent this money over and I didn't want to, I was threatened, I was scammed. You need to have that. There are different investigations when somebody has capacity versus when they don't.
Great. Thank you for that information. I mean, this is really, we could be asking these questions. You could see from the chat, so many people have been affected by this. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And there are so many resources. You know, I would like to, I want to share with you some information about Kona elder law. You know, Jennifer, if people want to take the next step and be able to, you know, reach out to you for help, what do you recommend as a next step?
People can get in touch with us. Our phone number is up there on the screen, but we also have a really helpful tip sheet, top 10 tips to avoid senior scams, that you can get there. You can scan in that QR code, or you can go to our website at conaelderlaw.com and go to the senior scams section, the practice area, and you can get our tip sheet there. Hang it on your fridge and just, you know, remind yourself of these things, because if you keep it top of mind, and again, if you talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors about these things, then if you get that phone call or you get that text, or, you know, you get that scenario that comes your way, you'll be attuned to it, and maybe it'll strike you and you'll say, you know what, maybe this doesn't all add up, and let me hang up the phone and let me, you know, not send money for these lottery winnings, or let me call my grandson and see if he really is in jail, or let me just think about this for a minute and not fall for the urgency, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe this really isn't the IRS threatening to do whatever if I don't send them money right away. Let me call my accountant instead. So we just want people to be aware, keep it top of mind. and follow these tips. So you can get in touch with us by calling us, by going to our website, or emailing us at elder@conalaw.com. And we're here to help people. We just want to help people either recover assets or not fall for these scams in the first place.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I will be sharing, I did share your website in the chat. I'll also be sharing all this information in an email that you will get tomorrow. And maybe this top 10 tips to avoid senior scams is a good thing to roll up in the Christmas gifts and the holiday gifts, and make sure everyone gets those important tips, because really this has been so important. Knowledge is power. And thank you so much for taking the time to educate all of us. Thank you so much, Arlene, Melissa, Ken, Jennifer, thank you so much for bringing this to our attentions and keeping it top of mind, particularly during this holiday season, to protect our elders. So thank you so much for all of it you do. Thank you to all of our participants for joining us today. As I shared, this is being recorded. We will share it with you. Please share it. Share it with as many people as you can. It's such critical information, and certainly will be welcome, so especially this time of year. Everyone have a wonderful day. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Bye-bye.